What is the difference between hazard and risk in tree risk assessment? Most people say that tree is a hazard, and that's usually where the analysis stops. But in professional tree risk assessment, hazard and risk are not the same thing. If you confuse the two, you will miscommunicate with clients, overprescribe removals, and potentially expose yourself to liability. As arborists, especially those working under ANZ A300 Part 9 and the ISA Tree Risk Assessment Qualification Methodology, precision in language is not optional. It is foundational. Let's clarify this correctly. First, we need to define hazard. Under the ANZ A300 Part 9 framework, a hazard refers to a tree or tree part with structural defects or conditions that increase the likelihood of failure and the potential to cause damage or injury. Notice what that definition focuses on. The tree condition itself. A hazard is about the presence of a defect and the potential for failure. Decay, cracks, included bark, dead or broken limbs, or root plate instability. These are hazards because they increase the likelihood that a part may fail, but a hazard by itself does not tell us the level of risk. Now let's define risk. Within the ISA Tree Risk Assessment Qualification System, risk is the combination of three components: likelihood of failure, likelihood of impacting a target, and consequences of failure. Risk is not just about whether something can fail. Risk is about what happens if it does. This is where many professionals and certainly many clients get it wrong. A tree can have significant defects. It can clearly be hazardous. But if there's no meaningful target, the overall risk may be low. Let's break down the three components of risk more carefully. First, likelihood of failure. This is the probability that a specific tree or tree part will fail within a given time frame. In track methodology, we assess this using categories such as improbable, possible, probable, or imminent. This evaluation is based on observable defects, site conditions, species characteristics, load factors, and professional judgment. Second, likelihood of impacting a target. A tree part can fail, but will it hit anything? We assess target occupancy and exposure. Is the area occupied constantly, frequently, occasionally, rarely, or not at all? A decayed limb over a high-use pedestrian walkway has a much higher likelihood of impacting a target than the same limb over a fenced-off natural area. Third, consequences of failure. If the tree part strikes the target, what are the expected consequences? Minor property damage, significant structural damage, serious injury, fatality. Consequences matter. When we combine these three components, we determine the overall risk rating. In the track system, that rating falls into one of four categories: low, moderate, high, or extreme. Now here is the critical distinction. Hazard describes the defect and potential for failure. Risk describes the potential outcome when failure interacts with a target. All hazards are not high risk. Let's look at a practical example. Imagine a large dead limb in the upper canopy of a mature oak. The limb shows advanced decay. There's clear structural compromise. That limb is a hazard. There's increased likelihood of failure. Now consider two different scenarios. In the first scenario, that oak is located in a remote, naturalized woodland area. There are no trails beneath it, no structures, no regular human presence. Likelihood of failure might be possible. Likelihood of impacting a target is rare. Consequences, if impact occurs, are minimal. The overall risk rating may fall into the low category. Now take that exact same limb, same tree, same defect, but this time the tree overhangs the main entrance to a school. Failure potential is unchanged, but target occupancy is frequent to constant. Consequences include potential serious injury to children. The overall risk rating may now be high, same hazard, different risk. And this is why simply labeling a tree as hazardous is incomplete and professionally inadequate. Our responsibility as arborists is not to eliminate hazards. Living trees inherently contain defects. They are dynamic biological systems. Our responsibility is to assess and manage risk. This distinction becomes especially important in consulting and municipal forestry. If we tell a client this tree is hazardous without explaining the level of risk, we create fear rather than clarity. We may unintentionally push toward removal when mitigation, monitoring, or target management would be appropriate. And ZA 300 Part 9 provides a structured framework for performing this assessment systematically. The ISA track methodology provides the standardized approach for evaluating likelihood and consequences in a defensible manner. When we assign a risk rating of low, moderate, high, or extreme, we're not making an emotional judgment. We are applying a structured decision-making process. Low risk means the likelihood and consequences are minimal. Moderate risk suggests that mitigation should be considered. High risk often warrants prompt mitigation. Extreme risk typically requires immediate action. Those decisions must be based on the combination of failure potential, target exposure, and consequences, not on the presence of decay alone. As professionals, we must communicate this clearly. When a client points to a cavity and says, "That looks dangerous," we do not respond with, "Yes, it is a hazard, end of story." We explain, "Yes, there is a structural defect that increases likelihood of failure. Now let us evaluate what it could impact. Let us evaluate the consequences. Then we will determine the actual level of risk." Precision in language builds credibility. It also builds defensibility. If your assessment is ever reviewed in a legal context, your report must demonstrate that you understood the difference between identifying a hazard and evaluating risk. Tree risk assessment is not defect hunting, it is structured risk analysis. Hazard is about the tree, risk is about the tree, the target, and the consequences interacting together. If you remember nothing else, remember this: a hazardous tree is not automatically a high-risk tree, and our job as arborists is not to remove hazards indiscriminately. It is to assess, communicate, and manage risk responsibly. That is the standard. That is the profession, and that is the difference. Thanks for listening to the Arborist podcast. Let's keep building your arborist knowledge one domain at a time. If you found this useful, please like and subscribe.